One of the things we use in CSS a lot is color, because that's a lot of what makes up a web page is the idea of what color it is. And there's a lot of details when it comes to color, and there's a lot of different ways to do color. Here's an example of 5 different ways to do a single color. So you can do it with a word, you can do it with RGB coloring, you can do it with a hex code, you can do it with HSL coding, or you can even do RGBA, which is just like RGB, except now it's adding a value for opacity. Well, color is a big deal, and if we go to W3 Schools, there's a lot of different tutorials, and if you look in more, there's a Learn Colors tutorial. And here's a tutorial that teaches you about colors. And there's lots of interesting things that are on here. It'll start with names, and these are color names that you can use, 140 color names that are supported by browsers. So you don't get to just pick any name, but all of these names, you can use just the name for them. And you also see that it shows a hex number. And notice when you hover on one, it gives you a couple of tools, a color mixer and a color picker. And you can find those over here too. And those are pretty fun. You can go to a color picker and you can say, oh, I want something like this color. And look at all the different varieties you get of that color. You can say, oh, that's kind of what I want. Or I want that color, and which version of it do I like? So that's pretty fun. A color mixer allows you to choose 2 different colors and then pick a mix of those 2. Another thing is all these different ways, right? We saw the color names and that option. But another way to do colors is with RGB colors. And RGB is coded with just the letters RGB, and then in parentheses there's 3 values. And the first value is how much red is in the color. The second one is how much green is in the color. And the next one is how much blue. So we have red, green, and blue. And the values can be all the way from 0 is the smallest and 255 is the largest. And here you can see that the red is 255 all the way at the top, and that's as high as it goes, and 0 is the lowest. And you can move these around. You say, well, what happens if I put a little bit more green, right? It changes the color. And notice up here in the RGB, it's changing how much green is there. Blue is currently at 0. If I shift that, then it says how far I went, 35. How about if I go a bunch? There's 188. So with 241, almost all the red, about 1/3 of the green, and 2/3 or 3/4 of the blue, I get this color of pink. Hexadecimal numbers also use red, green, and blue, but they use hex numbers for it. So it starts with a £sign or a hashtag, and the first 2 digits are for the red, the second 2 digits are for the green, and the last 2 digits are for the blue. And these are hexadecimal numbers, which means the digits can go from 0 to F, right? They go 0 through 9, and then they use A, B, C, D, E, and F. And that's how hex numbers work. And you see here how FF is the very largest. You're also seeing how it converts directly to RGB, right? They're the same. So we can do the same thing. We can add green. Notice how it is. Green is, let's see, 6D, right? The first digit is a 6, the second one is a D, and that's allowed in hexadecimal numbers. And I can get that blue up there, and we can find a hex number for the same color. HSL coloring is quite a bit different. HSL coloring starts with a hue, and the hue is the number is on the whole color wheel. There's 360 degrees, and each degree is a hue. So this value can go all the way from 0 to 360. And then saturation says how much do we want saturation. So here I've picked a yellow, and this is 100% saturation, or I can take it down to only 40% saturation. And notice that this value is a percentage. So is light a percentage. So the light, again, we can say, do we want it really, really light, or do we want it really, really dark? And notice when we get really, really dark, we see black no matter what the hue is, just because it's so dark. And if we get really, really light, it's white no matter what the hue is, because the light is so high. So those are 3 different ways, well, 4, right? Because we have the name, the RGB, hex, and HSL versions of colors. And we're going to be using colors in lots of different places in the style sheets. So you're going to want to get really comfortable with colors and how to make them work. And being able to find them and choose them is kind of fun too, right? And there's theory if you want to get into theory. There's color schemes if you want to get into color schemes. One of the things I want to warn you about, you can get really stuck in the color world and spend a lot of time figuring out colors. And so be careful. When you do it, I mean, it's fun and it's interesting, but kind of be careful that you might eat up time without realizing how much time you're spending on just figuring out what colors you want to use.